everyone, it's Niki Shelton and Kerri Selby with Keeping It Real. Kerri, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. The sun is shining after some really bad rain here. So it's nice to
We
have
had
a
a
reprieve from
beautiful day
that.
yesterday and now it's pouring down here. So
Oh, you guys got our rain.
I have a little special guest today. She'll come in a little bit later, but it was her birthday yesterday for a hint to anyone who knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, she had a beautiful day for her birthday. So it was kind of
That's
fun.
great.
So Kerri, I've heard you've been doing some research on the market. You got some new stuff to tell us. What's going on?
Yes, we actually just had an industry expert come and speak to us today about what things are looking like in the future. And there's been a big spread in some of the markets, like the 10-year and the federal rate, also mortgage-backed securities and the 10-year. There's these huge gaps, and that's what is causing these really high interest rates right now. Normally, mortgage-backed securities and the federal rate are 200 basis points apart. Well, right now they're 300 basis points apart. So that's 3%. And so that gives a huge explanation of why rates are so high right now. Normally, when this happens, which has only happened 5 times in the last 40 years, a recession follows. And after the recession, we see a drop in interest rates. So maybe late fall, early spring, at the end of the winter, maybe so early spring, we will be able to see a drop in those rates. They're not predicting when, but maybe just a little bit of a hint, like back in the 6s again, would be fantastic, and hopefully see a steady decline from there.
Well, I really hope so, because I need to go out and buy a house. Well, not necessarily me, but anyway. And this is kind of leading into what we're talking about today, right? The multi-generational thing. So I'm going to do a little announcement, because I've been kind of like, I haven't announced hardly anything with what's going on or anything yet. I know I got a lot of phone calls and a lot of text messages lately. So as most of you know, I'm actually in Nebraska right now. My mom and my brother and his family are all from here. I grew up here. I was raised here. I was born here. So I've got a big tie to the Nebraska community. But I still live in Washington State, and my heart is still in Washington State, and I'm still going back and forth, and I'm taking care of my clients, and I'm talking to my kids. So everything is good. Everybody's happy, and everybody's healthy, and it, like, I'm so blessed, because I get the best of both worlds, in my opinion. But I am spending some time here in Nebraska with my mom, and she's doing great. Like I said, everybody's happy and healthy, so it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Just kind of to, get some time with her. So. And I was able to do it. Dami is doing, she's with me, my daughter, and she's doing online school through Washington. So we're kind of on this extended kind of vacation, but living life and doing stuff. And so I am here in Nebraska. I go back and forth to Washington. We'll be back to Washington probably spring, maybe late spring, but maybe early spring. We haven't determined the deadline yet, but we'll be back there. But I'm just enjoying this time right now with my mom. Which kind of leads us to what we're talking about today, right, Kerri?
Yes.
It's a little different because
hot topic.
It is. So we're talking about multi-generational living, and there's a lot of people out there right now who are doing this on a permanent basis, or at least somewhat permanent, and even a little bit more than that. I've actually had my son who decided that he would like to move to Nebraska. I thought he was crazy, but not that I love most of it. It's just the winters are really horrible here. There's bets on if I'm going to say the whole winter or not, just so everybody knows. But anyway, he decided that he wanted to move here. So we actually have a child. She's not a young child, but she's a child. We have a young adult living with me. We have myself and my mom all living in one household right now. And fortunately, my mom's house is paid, so it wasn't a financial issue or anything like that. It's just, like I said, I was kind of lucky I got the time to come and spend with her. But we're kind of, we're kind of doing what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yes. And I've had my grandparents live with my family when I was still young, and it was financial purposes. My grandparents, it just became too expensive for them to live on their own once they retired. So they came to live with us to help lift that burden on them.
Absolutely. And yeah. I lived with my grandparents for a year in college too. And I had the best time. I don't know, maybe I just have good times all the time. I don't know.
You're pretty fun.
Well, my grandma used to make cinnamon rolls, you guys. She has the best cinnamon rolls. So nice. Anyway, was that bonus. But let's go ahead and get down to business. And like I said, I might be bringing in a special guest if I can get her to cooperate a little bit and talk a little bit about her feelings on it too, just because she's here. So again, we're talking about having different generations all living underneath one roof, and it is becoming way more not even acceptable, more just necessity. Sometimes it just makes more sense. So let's continue.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those challenges and some of the benefits, right?
Absolutely. And there's some negatives too. I mean, there's always like a plus and a minus with, I think, with everything. So there's that. We'll talk about that a little bit too. And then, not that we're shrinks or anything, or can't tell you really what to do. I guess that's probably not an appropriate word to use anymore, but but anyway, there are some things that at least my experience, like what you can do, like what I'm doing here personally to kind of, get rid of some of those obstacles and kind of make things work a little bit better. So we'll talk about those a little bit too towards the end. Okay. Yeah. All right. You want to talk for a minute, Kerri? Because I need a drink of water.
Yeah. So some of the reasons why people are starting to live together and why it's growing in popularity, number one thing is economic pressure. And it speaks to what we've been talking so much about, the rising cost of homes and the constant rise in interest rates. So for some people, it becomes financially necessary for them to be able to move in together. We also have an aging population, the baby boomers. It was one of the largest generations. And so a lot of those people are starting to retire and they don't want to go into a home. It costs money to put your family member in a home as well. And it's just not good for them. I worked in a nursing facility and just saw how people just did not appreciate being there because they hardly got visitors. So there is definitely a greater need for in-home care.
Hey, and so back up to the housing for real quick, just one up. So, at least here, at least in Washington, I know that they're doing a lot of new builds, and the new builds are not entry level like housing. I mean, they're more of the middle upper kind of, and that's most of the housing developments. And I've done some research into that, and pretty much it's just for a new build. It's for the builder. It's just not. Numbers don't make sense. So it doesn't make sense to build like a really inexpensive starter home. And so it's really it's kind of almost like pushing more people to move up in those. So that way, there can be some people who get into the beginning entry level homes, but they're just not keeping up. So if you can't get into a home, because there's never enough entry level homes, it doesn't seem like it. So if you can't, that might be another, that could be like your only option at some point. So
and that's something we'll go into on one of the further slides is builders and what they're doing. So one thing I actually learned about when I was working in a skilled nursing facility is we're kind of a culture that is a throwaway culture. And when our elderly get old, we just kind of put them to the side. We cast them to the side instead of taking care of them. Most other cultures, their families live with them and they continue to take care of one another throughout their lifetimes. And there's also a lot of shifts in family structures, lots of single parents out there. And so having mom or dad come live with you is someone that can be a child, care provider when you're at work, providing for the family.
Or even having the younger kids leave and then come back home. Because I've had a couple of kids do that, and my thing is like, yes, please come back home. I love my kids. I was one of those parents who sent them to school, but I was excited. I didn't want them to go to school. Like when it got like the end of summer, it's like, yes, or the beginning of summer, it's like, yes, we need to go play for 2 months. I love to have my kids around. And so when they do that to me, like, hey mom, is it okay? I'm like, absolutely. But it does change the dynamics in the house. And they have different needs too. So we can continue into that. All right, let me go ahead and move it forward. Okay. I'll let you keep talking.
So urbanization, this is one thing that builders are doing. There's a whole entire neighborhood just not very far from here where they are building ADUs attached to the home. Builders are finding that it's, like you said, they don't want to build those starter homes. It's not economic for them. But if they can put 2 families in one residence, perfect. I had a friend of mine that I helped with the purchase, and her in-laws were moving in with them. So they needed a larger home, and they were able to divide part of their new home. They reconstructed the whole thing. Basically, it's a brand new house, and we're able to make an entire area that's just for comfortable living for her in-laws. So it's getting much more popular.
Like when we moved to, after we moved to Washington and had been settled for a couple of years, we actually started looking at other homes other than the home that we're currently in and that we bought when we originally got here. I've been in my house forever, but we kind of stopped and took a break in the middle of it and kind of started looking at homes. But that was the whole thing. We wanted something in an ADU unit because we both had aging parents, and we also had kids who were going to be up into like the high school, college age. And it was like, it would have been great to have a place for them to come back to, not necessarily in our space, but close.
Most definitely. Yeah. And some of these become redundant. I mean, there's a lot of quality of life when you live with family members. There's not the loneliness. You can also learn from the older generation, but that's also a con. As you'll see on the next slide, it could be good and bad having someone who's older advise you. And sometimes you feel like you just want to be out there on your own, but we talked about aging.
I want to pull my daughter in. Okay. So hold on one second.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring Domini in. Hey, Dom.
Hello, Domini. Happy birthday.
So, Domini, what was one of the best things about living with Grandma this year, at least so far? I mean, we've had a lot of great memories, but what's your favorite thing? Because why?
And I'm gonna make dessert with her, so I can learn all of like the good recipes. Yummy.
Right, exactly. So she's learning some cooking skills that, I mean, I don't have time to cook anymore. So fortunately, my mom does, and so she's been learning that. So that's a positive, right?
100%. Yep. That's a valuable life skill for sure.
So there are a lot of advantages, like Kerri just said. I mean, you know, it's like getting a different perspective on life. I mean, you know, like sometimes my mom's just like, slow down, you know, like, let's go do that. You know what I mean? So that, I think, is super important to have that. But like you said, there can be negatives with that too, right?
There can be. So we did talk about cultural diversity, and in some cultures, it's good for people to have those traditions passed on. And so that's one advantage. You can also learn conflict resolution. You know, one thing, I think a lot of people don't approach their emotions any longer. They don't address them. They don't try to solve them. So dealing with people that are older and have the kind of the seasoning, I guess, and they know what they're doing could definitely help with some conflict resolution.
They definitely kind of hold their ground, and it's like, it's this way. They're pretty steady about what they're doing. Exactly. Yep. You share responsibilities. That's another one. I mean, you know, I'm living with my mom, and it's like, I'm doing some of the stuff. She's doing some of the stuff. I'm having my kids do some of the stuff. My son's doing not necessarily cleaning, but he's doing like stuff around the house outside that needs to get done. So it's been kind of this, like, you know, we're all kind of working together and kind of, what can we do? And without destroying the whole other part of it. We'll get to that. And then the stability and the interconnectedness too. That's so important. I mean, like, that's one of the reasons I'm here, because it's just like, I mean, it's just like, I want to be connected with my mom. I want to have that time with her, and, you know, and having my daughter have that time with her grandma, I think is so important. So
I agree. I love it.
All right. Let's talk about some disadvantages.
Privacy.
So, you know, and you know, and it's not just me. It's like, I mean, you know, I always I'm trying to take a step back, like, you know, because like her house is only so big, and she's got an extra 3 people. She's got, you know, years and years. She's been in her house since I was like 9 years old, I think. So she's lived here forever, and she has accumulated a lot of items, and, you know, there's only so much room. I mean, we've left our suitcases out, you know, like when we came for weeks or 2 or 3 or 4 at a time before in the summers, but it's not like, oh, I need a place to do my work now. I need this and stuff. And so there's been a lot of, you know, it's a little bit crowded, and it's like, you know, there's losing a lot of that privacy. And I mean, you just don't have it. I mean, like her and I, you know, we're sharing a room, for instance, right? So she's losing her privacy. I'm losing my privacy. But I'm also thinking, you know, my mom is losing a lot of her privacy too, because she's not used to having everyone there. So that is an issue. All right.
Yeah. And that can lead to the next thing, which is conflict and tension, because when we don't have the things that we're used to, it tends to build up a little bit and cause some conflicts. So, and you can also have difference in values. Even though your mom raised you, you guys aren't the same person, and you're probably not raising your children the same way that your mom raised you.
Right.
So that could cause issues as well.
Exactly. You know, and then communicating, sometimes, like, you know, you might not want to say something because you're afraid you're going to hurt the other person. That's not your intention. But on the other hand, it might be the thing exactly you need to do, and say, hey, look, we need to talk about this. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I'll take like just not necessarily when there's an issue or anything like that, but just in general, like I'll just walk up and do like a kind of a wellness check. I guess that's kind of the way I put it. It's like a wellness check. How's things going? What do you need? What could we change? What would make it better? And I try to do that periodically just to make sure everybody's going, I can, I have that. I kind of might doing on my own thing too, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. What else are we talking about?
Sometimes you can be too dependent on a person too. And you can start to take advantage of having someone there all the time. We did talk about sharing responsibilities, how grandparents can come in and help with the children. You don't want it to become something where they're no longer enjoying their grandkids because their full-time responsibility is taking care of them. So you just have to really be careful and put up those boundaries and say, okay, when I come home, the kids are mine. So you have your free time, and the kids aren't completely dependent on you, and neither am I. So,
yep. And it really works a lot of different ways. And I'm kind of seeing it all kind of happen. Kind of going, okay, we got it.
No, it's perfect that this is something you're going through, because it's really becoming more common. And like I said earlier, one of the things that we don't do in this culture is live together, where most others do. So,
see, and I actually am really enjoying it. I like living in Washington. I like where I live. I would just have more family around me all the time. That's all.
Yes, I know that's the hard thing about us being in Washington too.
And hide once in a while too. So
yeah.
Okay, and we talked about parenting styles.
Yeah, we did.
So I know
even though it could be good to move in together financially, if you share expenses, it could also be a financial strain. How do you think that could happen?
I don't know. I guess if maybe one person's picking up all the stuff and the other one's not contributing. I mean, that's one of the things that before we even moved out here that my mom and I talked about, like, how would this work and what can I do to contribute? Because I know that we're going to be increasing these costs. So what can I do to help alleviate some of that? So That's one of the things we did. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Space and noise. Oh my God.
I'm sure your mom was used to silence.
There's like no quiet, but we do try to leave. I mean, like on our behalf, we try to leave frequently and give her some just like alone time too. And she doesn't really want to go out as much either. She's more of a homebody, whereas I like to be out. So I just drag the kids along and we do a lot of like family fun stuff out away from the house. And then she gets some alone time. So we're working it out.
Yeah. Very good.
All right. There's a
lot on here. I mean,
there's a lot on here.
And we could go into detail about everything, but really it all just boils down to that there's a lot of things that you sacrifice, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that you gain, and everything is perspective too.
See, and I don't think I would change this time for anything. I mean, I've always been very fortunate that I get to come back every summer and spend this time with my mom and my family, who I don't get to see, like a couple weeks out of the year, like usually. And so, like I said, I got this, and it was just kind of like, it's a perfect thing. So, I mean, but there's things that come up, and you have to keep the communication line open. You have to don't be afraid to hurt my feelings. I mean, you have to talk and you have to communicate it, because it's really, really important to make sure everybody's happy, and you're not building up those tensions or those hard feelings or resentments, because that's not what you want with your family anyway. So
exactly. And
I think, and I remember being in college, and I mean, like I said, some of those memories in college with my grandparents were probably some of my best memories. I mean, it was just the connections I had with my grandparents or was able to have with them, because I live with them. And I think Domi's kind of getting that too. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. And a lot of people don't get that. So I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's what we talked about, right? And do you have anything else to add to that, since I talked so much?
No, but I think both of us had a lot to say about it, because we both lived in similar situations. You just have to have mutual respect for one another and a willingness to do the multi-generational living. If it becomes a necessity, you just have to work it out, honestly. But a lot of people are doing it just because they want to take care of their family members. They want that interconnectedness. I loved having my grandparents live with me, because when I was growing up, they lived in Florida and I lived in New York. So when my youngest sister was born, they decided to move from Florida to California to be closer to us. And they lived in their own apartment for a while, which was great. I got to see them. But when they moved in with us, I just loved being able to have my grandma and grandpa there. It was just another set of parents. I was always very close to them. So it just created even more of a bond. And for me, it worked. For my parents, it worked.
Yep. It does. And it, and it is what you make of it. And you just try to appreciate the time and, you do your best. I mean, there's always going to be stuff, but do your best.
Exactly.
But it's worth it. So, there are a lot of homes. I mean, you do, if this is something that sounds good to you, there are a lot of homes on the market that are built for or multi-generationals. I know we were looking at some for the kids to have like one on an upper floor, one on a bottom floor where they could still like live in the same structure, but the different residences, like a duplex kind of is an option kind of thing or whatever. But there's a lot of times you can even add stuff like a kitchen in the lower level of a home and stuff and make it work that way too. So,
yeah, that neighborhood in Silverdale, they actually have on one side of the garage is a small unit and it's connected but it's got a separate entrance. And then the other side is for the rest of the family living. So a lot of builders are really opening up to this idea about multi-generational living, and they're making it work and they're making it happen.
Yep.
And I know in our county, they're really kind of loosening some of the red tape with putting ADUs on properties, because for some people it's good for their families, but it's also good for an income stream. So we're seeing more of that open up as well.
Yeah, because I mean, before it was so tight that you weren't able to, to do anything hardly with your home and stuff. And now that that's an option. So, if you need help on that, definitely talk to your real estate person. That's all I have for today. Thanks for joining us, and make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and follow button. And if you have any questions, shoot them out at us on comments, and we'd be happy to answer them and get back to you next week. Thanks,
all right,
everyone.
thank you.